as it is our tradition on our anniversary episodes, we are covering another Halloween movie in chronological order, sort of. And this year, we are talking about Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers.
And what did you think after all these years, putting it back in the VHS and watching it?
Oh, man, I love this movie. This is one of those that I watch almost every year.
This one reminds me about our old days in 5th and 6th grade.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, that was kind of like the time period that we were hanging out, and when this movie came out. Do you remember like the first time you saw it? And you remember when it was coming out in theaters and everybody was all excited about it?
Because I think we have talked about sort of doing stuff back in those days when these movies were coming out. You had like Halloween 4, you had whatever, Nightmare on Elm Street 4 and 5, Nightmare on Elm Street Part 7, Part 8, and we used to always cut the advertisements out of the paper. And when I say paper, folks, I'm talking about back in the olden days. Some of us used to get what we would call a newspaper delivered to our homes. There was an entertainment section in that newspaper, and in that newspaper it would have things called comics. So you would have this, like Garfield was in there, Blondie was in there, some of these other comics that were, Calvin and Hobbes every day. But they also had a movie theater advertisement for wherever you got it from, and we lived kind of in the Chicagoland area, so we got advertisements for a bunch of theaters, and sometimes you would get, if you were lucky, you would get like a quarter-page ad for a movie that was coming out, so we would always cut them out and save them. And I remember cutting out the Halloween 4 and Halloween 5 advertisements.
Yeah, me too. And the cool thing about the Halloween 4 advertisement that the poster art, if you all are familiar with, it was the original Michael Myers mask. And actually, if you can track that picture down that was used to create that poster art, it was a picture of the hero mask. I think it was after Halloween 2, because it was the same mask used in Halloween and Halloween 2. And there's a picture of the mask just like laying on the floor or laying on a table or something. And it's actually the same picture that they used for the novelization of Halloween 4. You can see the real picture. And they took that, and an artist did an interpretation of it, or redrew it or copied it or whatever to give it that look, and put it in front of the looks like the Wallace house from the original movie, which is kind of weird. And that was the poster for Halloween 4. And the funny thing about that was, the big deal with Halloween 4 was Michael Myers is back, hence the subtitle, The Return of Michael Myers. So they wanted to make sure that everybody knew that this was a Michael Myers movie, because, Halloween 3 kind of tanked at the box office. So they put his face really big up on that poster. And I think, to be honest with you, I think the one I got, like those little advertisements that you're talking about, like when the movie first came out, or if it was like a week before or whatever, they would put it, and it would be really big. And I think mine was I remember almost a full sheet. That
would have been cool.
Full page. But then as the weeks went on, the ad got smaller and smaller and smaller. So you'd have a little tiny Halloween 4 ad by the end of a month or so into the run.
Yeah, I remember I had a couple of picture frames, larger picture frames, whatever those were, 8 by 10s or whatever they were. And I remember there was a couple of times where I would be able to have a full picture in that of one movie, but a lot of times it was 2 or 3 or 4 of them in there. I don't remember if I ever had a big one of Halloween 4. I could have if they ever had it, and if we got the same paper, then I probably did, because I always remember cutting them out every week. And I don't remember if my parents ever got pissed off at me for doing that or not.
Getting that paper for us, it was the Chicago Tribune.
Yep.
And it came every, I want to say Sunday. I think it was a Sunday. It came, we only got like the Sunday edition, which was like this really giant, thick version. Like the rest, like if you got it every day or whatever, it was like I don't even know if they sold, I assume they probably had it like every day you could get it. But for whatever reason, I remember we only got like the Sunday edition and it was like jam-packed with stuff. It had like, it was like a really thick paper with all kinds of crap in it.
Yeah, if I remember right, and I think we only got it on Sundays too, because my dad would go to the White Hen that was like 2 blocks away, like every Sunday morning, and would get donuts maybe, although which is weird because there was a Dunkin' Donuts right next door to it, but he would always get the Sunday paper. Like you said, it would be like this massive like 10-pound thing, and you'd always bring it home. And I always remember being a kid and like always like looking through like the advertisements too, because you'd always like want to see who was selling what. You know, if you wanted to ask for something like, oh, hey, Kmart's has the new G.I. Joe things. Can we go and get those? And no. Oh, shit. But I remember the first time that I saw Halloween 4, which was, I think, the same time, or maybe it was a different visit, but it was the same situation with Friday the 13th Part 6, when I would go stay with my one grandparents. My grandmother would always take us in, and we could, like me and my brother or whoever was there, if it was my cousins or whatever, we could always rent a movie in town, and both sets of my grandparents would do this to where they didn't care. They were just like, yeah, go get a movie. And they would let you run through the store. And I remember like my one set of grandparents, I got like a bunch of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. And I remember like one year I got all of the Silent Night, Deadly Night movies that were out. No backlash or anything from them. They didn't know what they were. They didn't care. They didn't see them. They didn't have any. But I remember at my other grandparents' house, I watched Friday the 13th Part 6 and Halloween 4. And I remember, and this is no lie, the very first time I saw Halloween 4, it was unedited, and it was this out in the middle of nowhere, this dark farmhouse, and my grandmother was not there for some reason, and my grandfather was probably out doing some chores or whatever. And I don't remember what time of year it was, but I remember it was dark. And I put this movie on, and I was sitting in the living room, and I had all the lights off, and I was watching this movie in the dark, and it scared the living shit out of me. But now, I will say that I was like 11 or 12 at the time of this, so I mean, I was like, a little kid, but this movie scared the shit out of me the first time I saw it, and I remember that to this day. Like, every time I watch it, it's like one of those things, like, I don't get creeped out by it now at all. That is always in my head, that this movie scared the living crap out of me when I was a kid.
Was this your introduction to Michael Myers?
No, I don't think so, because I think we had watched probably 1 and 2 edited at your house prior to this.
Yeah, probably. Okay.
So, but I don't know if I saw this one or Friday the 13th Part 6 first. I mean, they kind of came out, relatively at that time and age. I don't know, if I saw either one of them when they first came out on video.
Yeah, I think Friday 6 came out first.
Yeah, so I don't know which one I saw first, but I know that one of these two was the first, like, unedited horror movie, like real unedited horror movie that I saw. I might have seen Aliens, like, on HBO before this, but I'm not sure. Because, I mean, that whole time, I don't remember. I couldn't tell you, like, when Aliens premiered on HBO, I couldn't tell you that compared to when other stuff came out or anything. But, yeah, I remember seeing this, and I remember it scaring the crap out of me.
It's funny because I can't remember seeing Halloween 4 for the first time. I was trying to think about that. Because what happened was back in, it must have been sixth grade. It was either fifth or sixth. Can't remember which one. But when this movie came out for us, and I remember our mutual friend was going to see it with his mother, and he asked, I don't know, I think a few of us, if us kids back then, if we could go with. And I remember my parents were like, didn't let me go, and I was really down about that because I was really excited about it. So I didn't get to see it in the theater when it came out, and that would have been my first Halloween. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see it, but so I think I saw it. The first time I saw it was actually, I think either we rented it. No, you know what? I think we had, like, my parents never bought the premium channels on cable, but every once in a while, like HBO or Showtime would give you like a free,
sure, yep,
couple of weeks or whatever to try to like get you sucked in. And I think like one time they did that, and Halloween 4 was on, and I recorded it off of it, and it must have been like, gosh, I can't remember when that would have been. So I taped it off of there, and that was the first time I think that's the first time I saw it. So I had it on like I copied it on a VHS. On cable, that TV channel or that TV Guide channel that you have, where it just basically shows all the
yep.
Well, I remember back in like the late 80s on that channel where it just showed basically what was on, they constantly played the Halloween 4 trailer. It was like always like constant back and forth. Like, every time you flip that on, the trailer basically showed the scene where Jamie opens up the closet door and Michael pops up, and then like, Loomis seeing Michael in the gas station, and some stuff like that. And it really got me excited because I saw the original Halloween like when I was like 5 years old. So that's what started me out. So I saw the first one, and I saw the second one, like the TV edit, like not too much long like after that, whenever like maybe fourth or fifth grade, somewhere around there. So I already had the first two in the bag before the fourth one came out. So when the fourth one came out, I was really excited, couldn't wait for it. And then like I had the anticlimactic, because I wasn't able to see it in the theater.
Yeah, I wonder if back in those days, and I can't really remember everyday events back in those days, but 1988 was completely different than it is in 2018, which actually, too, this is the 30th year anniversary of this movie, which I'm just realizing now as I'm saying that.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Well, I guess I kind of was thinking that the other day because I was thinking like this was almost the H2O how we're getting the H4O this year. We got cheated out of an H3O, but anyway, to go back to my thought, with it being, how stuff was back in the late 80s, you weren't as submerged in social media and, Google and, all of this other stuff online all the time, like me and you, and I'm sure there's several other folks out there listening to this right now that have checked things like Bloody Disgusting maybe once or twice today already.
Oh, yeah.
Or get notifications from them or whatever the case might be. So back in 1988, this movie would have came out in October, and there probably would have been some hype for it. We probably were aware of it coming out in, say, maybe late August or September, and we're like, oh, man, we got to see that movie, And then it came out, and then was in the theaters for, a couple of weeks, maybe a month, and then went away. And then I would assume, us being 11, 12 years old at the time, that we were probably like, oh, we didn't get to see Halloween. And then, by the time Thanksgiving came around, we were like, what? Until it came out in the video rental place, and when you happen to be in there with your mom and dad, and you're like, oh, Halloween 4, that's right.
Yeah, it is kind of like, it's really weird because you would wait for that to pop up in the video store after it's kind of, had its theatrical run, and then all of a sudden you'd be in the video store one day, you'd go to the new release section, and there it would be, and you're like, oh crap, there's Halloween 4, awesome.
Yeah, and like it's not even how stuff is today. Take like Star Wars, for example. 3 years in advance when Star Wars is coming out in the theater, and then by the time you get home from the viewing of it opening night, or, in some cases 2 weeks before opening night or the day before opening night or whatever the case is, when it's coming out on video, or, well, nowadays, when it's getting released on demand and on Blu-ray and stuff. I mean, hell, half the time anymore you can go to Walmart, or I would assume like Best Buy or Target and all these other places do the same thing, where you can go and you can buy the pre-order it on like Blu-ray and then get like $5 off of your movie ticket or whatever kind of a deal. Yeah, it's just a completely different time, but to actually get into the movie, here we are, almost 20 minutes in. So, as we said earlier, this is the return of Michael Myers, and as we have talked about in depth before in previous episodes multiple times, you had Halloween 1, Halloween 2, which happened on Halloween night, 1978. Halloween 3 came out, and they went a completely different direction. They were going to do an anthology series, and as Mark alluded to earlier, that failed sort of miserably, even though now Halloween 3 has its own sort of cult following. Outside of the original, I would dare to say that Halloween 3 probably one of the more popular films in the franchise, just because it seems to have its own beast going on. But anyway, what's his face?
Akkad.
Yeah, Akkad, stepped in and said, all right, we're bringing Michael back because that's what the people want.
Oh, yeah.
And so we got the return of Michael Myers. And as we talked about in an episode earlier this year, John Carpenter was signed on to work on Halloween 4, but that fell through. So we got the movie that we got now, which is basically Michael Myers is back, and instead of hunting down Laurie Strode, he is now hunting down Jamie Lloyd, who is Laurie Strode's daughter. This movie kind of reminded me of The Force Awakens with
Halloween 4 did?
Yeah, in back to, Force Awakens to A New Hope. In that it was kind of a, back in the late 80s, I don't think the whole soft reboot or reboot term was ever used by anybody. So there was a lot of similarities to the original Halloween in this movie. There was a lot of what some folks would call paying homage to the original. Other folks would call ripping off the original in Halloween 4.
Sure.
It definitely has a similar feel to it. Minus the fact that Michael Myers looks completely different than he does in the original.
Yeah, you know what? And that's probably one of my biggest qualms with this movie is the mask. And I know we've talked about masks in the past. And see, Halloween 4 to me was basically what happened was, the Friday the 13th movies, the Nightmare on Elm Street movies were taken off. And, Halloween was like, Mustafa Akkad was like, we got to get this thing going. We got to make a franchise here to keep up with this. We're losing money. They basically created a slasher franchise film. They got a bigger guy than the original Michael Myers, Nick Castle, and they actually padded him up. They actually put football padding underneath his costume, which you can kind of tell in a few scenes, and it's a little awkward. And then but the mask for this film, and again, I've talked about this a few times. Like one of my biggest issues with all horror movies is my monster has to look cool. He has to look like the way I want him to. It's almost like I can sort of forgive the other stuff in the movie as long as the monster looks good. So, like, for perfect example would be Halloween 2. Halloween 2, the 1981 version, is not a really good movie. It's actually like the new characters that we're introduced to, the nurses and the paramedics and all that. They're pretty poorly written, and some of the dialogue is borderline terrible. But like the fact that Michael Myers is walking around with the original William Shatner mask, and he looks like Michael Myers, and there's like some really cool shots of him like in the dark or in the hospital and all that. I sort of forgive all of that because I'm like, oh, okay, well that's all right. At least I got these really cool shots. Now with Halloween 4, probably one of my biggest problems with this film is that they totally screwed up with Michael Myers. They messed up with the mask big time. And I know the story behind the mask, where basically the mask from the original movie was used for part 2, and they tried to get it for this one as well, and I guess it was deteriorated or something. They weren't able to get a hold of it. But so they basically got Don Post, I believe, to send them another Captain Kirk, and then they did like what's it called, where they basically recast. They basically cast new sculpt or new molds off of the Captain Kirk mask, so you can kind of see the features are there. But when they pulled the mask out and they put the hair on and painted it, they did a terrible job. And actually, this is how bad like the mask department or the FX department where it was in this movie. They originally were going to have him wear the Captain Kirk mask unaltered, and there's actually a scene in Halloween 4 where he has the unaltered Captain Kirk mask on, and like that. The whole movie was filmed that way. Do you know what scene I'm talking about?
Is it the school scene?
Yes. Yep. Yeah. Absolutely. The mask has blonde hair, and the eye holes aren't cut. It's actually so the production team didn't even know that they needed to paint it white and cut the eye holes bigger and put brown hair on it. So they actually had to reshoot all the Michael Myers scenes with an altered mask. But when they altered it, they didn't pull the sideburns off. They painted eyebrows on to give him kind of like a surprised look. And it just didn't work. So like throughout the entire movie, even as a kid, I remember like thinking, yeah, I don't really like what this mask looks like. This just doesn't look the way I remember it. So I've always been very disappointed in that part of the movie. And I hate to like be like a total old man gripe, but like George Wilbur, I just don't think he understood the Michael Myers character. And he's the guy who played Michael Myers. I just don't think and there's a lot of things that he does in this film that just do not seem like something that Michael Myers would do. For example, like climbing on the roof or like climbing in the back of the pickup truck. Those are things that just don't, to me, like seem like anything like I would have, like that Nick Castle original Michael Myers would have done in a film. So for those reasons, those are big, big turnoffs for me in this film.
See, I would like to think with the mask, and I know that this wasn't intentional, but as I was saying before, how it had some similarities to the original Halloween. So in the original Halloween, the mask just came from Michael Myers grabbing it in the drugstore or whatever, the hardware store, and throwing it on, just a random mask.
Yeah.
And then in part 4, Jamie and Rachel, who is the other main character in this movie, are out costume shopping at whatever it was, like a drugstore or whatever. This is where Jamie Lloyd, played by Daniel Harris, which we haven't mentioned yet, finds the iconic clown costume, and then turns around and sees Michael Myers and freaks out or whatever. But Michael Myers again grabs this white mask off of the wall and puts it on. So it's not like he went back and got the original mask. What I like to think, and I don't know if they ever like try to play off on this any way, shape, or form at all, but the mask that Michael Myers pulls off of the wall and puts on his head in part 4, I like to think is a mask of Michael Myers from the boogeyman that was 10 years ago in this movie, rather than just some random white mask.
Well, yeah, you know what? So you're saying basically like that mask that he finds in Vincent Drugstore is a copy of the mask. Like basically, like they said, okay, there was a serial killer in town 10 years ago, and he wore this white mask, and so we're going to make a copy of it, and this is what you get.
Right, yeah, like it's the Michael Myers mask and not
Got
just like the, cheapo white face, brown hair mask.
Well, I kind of like that because it actually it's funny that you say that because it actually resembles the Don Post version of the Michael Myers mask that was available back then, where it's sort of a generic look. It didn't have really the Kirk features and all of that. So, it kind of reminded me of that. And in that sense, like, yeah, okay. But at the same time, it just, to me, like, that mask is so iconic and it has such, like a, it's so imprinted in my brain and the
Right.
way it looks in like certain scenes and all of that. So when you don't see that, it's like you're kind of like in my head, it's like, oh, that doesn't really seem like Michael Myers. And that's the one thing about this movie is the Michael Myers in this film reminds me of the type of like it reminds me of like if you go every around this time of year in October, you go to like a haunted house or a hayride or something, a haunted hayride, and there's a guy like dressed like Michael Myers, and basically he's like, kind of like a he's like sort of the generic slasher guy. He's like, oh, I'll wear a work shirt and some work boots, and I'll wear this mask, and I'll hold a knife or a machete or something. I'm kind of like, and he doesn't really. Obviously, the guy doesn't know like what Michael Myers looked like, so he's just sort of like, kind of like, oh, I'll be the generic slasher guy, and that's kind of what this interpretation reminded me of. It just kind of was like, oh yeah, white mask, oh knife, oh yeah, I'll put the coveralls on, but it didn't have that same feel like that's the same guy that we saw in the first movie.
Right. So and I'll expand on that just a little bit. So, because I actually saw this again today when I was at Walmart. Do you remember when we were kids and you could go to like Jewel Osco and they had like the Halloween section, which was like the best in town. And you could buy, well, back then, like the big thing you could buy was like Freddy Krueger stuff.
Oh yeah.
But then you could also buy like the cheap, just plain white hockey mask. It wasn't a Jason hockey mask. It was the hockey mask. And the reason I bring that up is because I was at Walmart today and they had the same thing. I was like, but there's just a hockey mask. And I almost got it. I almost bought it just to bring it to you tomorrow and give it to you. Be like, hey, here, I got your Jason mask.
Oh, that's funny.
But so I mean, I don't know. I just tell myself that just to make myself feel better about it because when I watched it this year, that's one of the first things I really was kind of like, oh man, that mask is bad. Holy crap! It's not the worst in the series, but it is bad.
Yeah, it's rough. Like the 4 and 5 masks are pretty rough. And I understand like one of the things too, like with Halloween 4, it's kind of funny because a lot of fans they're either Halloween 4 fans or Halloween 2 fans. And it's like those like Halloween 2 and Halloween 4 are sort of like the go-to sequels. And like I prefer the Halloween 2 over Halloween 4. But I get it. Like, it's kind of funny because at Halloween 2, you get Michael Myers that looks like Michael Myers, but you get some really stupid characters. And then Halloween 4, you get Michael Myers that doesn't look like Michael Myers, but you get better written characters, like Rachel and Jamie. And, it's kind of better. At that point, it's like, and even like and with Halloween 4, another positive about it was the atmosphere is good. They do a good job kind of bringing back sort of that look of its Halloween time in a Midwestern town. They use some of the blue lights like Carpenter did. So it kind of overall gives that feel again, like you kind of like it connects well with the original in that way. And I see, and I do have to give it props for that because a lot of the later sequels didn't have that. Like I think of like H2O, which was supposed to be a return to form. And it just like, is the most bland, horribly filmed one of the worst sequels in terms of like it just doesn't look like a Halloween movie at all when you watch it. And I used to actually like that movie, but that's for another day. But
will be for our 7th year episode.
Good idea.
I had to count there for a second. I was like, wait, what? So,
oh man, we've been doing this a long time.
Yeah, we have. Well, that's what happens when you get old.
I tell you. But yeah, Halloween 4, it's like, to me, it's like, it's not one of my go-to films, and again, I'm like one of those crotchety old guys where basically I'm going to stick with the original Halloween on Halloween night. I'm going to watch that. And before I watch that, sometime in October, I'm going to watch Halloween 2 and I watch them in reverse.
No, man, it drives me nuts. Some guys on Facebook posting he's watching all the sequels and he's watching them in reverse order. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Which I don't watch all of the Halloween movies, but because I think we talked about this before too. So Halloween to me as a series is kind of split up in, well, really 4 different parts. Well, 5, I guess, really. So you have Halloween 1 and Halloween 2. You have Halloween 3, which is his own beast. And then you have the Thorn Saga. So you have Part 4, Part 5, Part 6, H2O, and Resurrection, which I couldn't even tell you the last time I've seen either one of those movies.
Yeah.
And then you have the zombie movies. So it seems to me every year I always watch the original Halloween. I watched that actually probably back in September, I think, is when I first watched Halloween this year. And then some years I'll watch Halloween, and then I'll watch Halloween 2, and that'll kind of be it. Other years I'll watch Halloween, and then I'll watch like the Thorn movies. And then other years I'll watch Halloween, and then I'll watch zombies movies. It's weird that I ever watch more than 3 or 4 of them in a year. I think it was last year or the year before. I was I'm going to watch all of them in a row. And I got to like 4 or 5, and then I was like, all right, that's enough Halloween for this year.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, I watched Part 4 yesterday, and I hadn't watched that in a long time. I think I saw bits and pieces of it on like AMC Fear Fest when it's on. To me, it's like I start my October out with, actually, I start out with Halloween 3. Now, I'm not one of those like Halloween 3 like is a great movie guys. Like, I know that there's this huge new following of Halloween 3 fans that popped up out of the woodwork that were nowhere to be found back when it came out, obviously. To me, Halloween 3 is a terrible movie. It's like probably one of the worst movies ever filmed. And I would be extremely embarrassed to be like connected to that in some way, because it's a horrible movie. I mean, like the acting is bad, the writing is terrible. Oh, it's just horrible. But it's so horrible, it's fun to watch. It's like, and there's some good acting, like Colonel Cochran, and I mean Tom Atkins is fun to watch. But my gosh, I mean, every time like he like has sex with that girl in the hotel room, like it's just like it's like, really, this was written like, I mean, like, this is it's so bad. But anyhow, I always start out with Halloween 3 just because it's got like that Halloween vibe, It really kind of connects with October, and that's the reason I watch it. But I get it. I watch it, get it in, get it out of the way, and I'm done with it. Then I go to Halloween 2 as the day approaches, get a little closer. And then on the day of Halloween, I always have to toss in Halloween, the original, which to me, and this is the thing, we're talking about, we're going to be seeing the remake, or not the remake, but the new one real soon here. And I think I've come to the conclusion after all these sequels and remakes and everything, and I haven't seen, we haven't seen the new one yet, the 2018 version. But I think like to wrap up all the Halloween movies, I think Halloween ended in 1978 when Michael got shot off that balcony. Loomis looks over the balcony and he's gone. I really think that's when the story ended. I don't think there really is anything else. I think us fans just are so desperate that we want so much more from this franchise that we're like, desperate to find, oh, give me a little bit more and give me a little bit more. And we're always disappointed when, well, some of us are. And I think it's the same thing kind of with Star Wars. I think this is like an old man thing, but like, you know what? When the second Death Star was blown up in Return of the Jedi, I think kind of Star Wars ended. But, at the same time, it's like we want more, we want more, we want more, and then we get a little bit, but we're never fully satisfied.
That's probably kind of an accurate statement. It's gotten to that point with some of this stuff to where, we had It last year, which was, it was technically a remake, or depending on how you think of it. You get to the point now where there's a lot of this rebirthing of content. Look at, not horror related at all, but look at sitcom TV right now. You have, Roseanne, but now it's The Conners. My wife watches Will and Grace, which is rebooted from like the 90s. I saw like Murphy Brown was back on the air, and there's couple other shows that are back on the air, and it's like Hollywood needs to come up with, and I know we've said this probably 1,000 times before, but come up with an original idea. Give us something, because look at the Conjuring series from, the past, 8 years or whatever. That's a moneymaker, and that was an original idea. I'm not saying it was great. The first Conjuring is pretty good, actually. At least I like it. But this whole having to go back and rehash Michael Myers and Freddy Krueger and, look at Leatherface, the last how many years. They keep trying to reboot that and retell that, and, and you have all this shit going on with Friday the 13th right now, and, they want to bring that back in some form. And it's like, if you want to bring it back, but don't do this whole retconning stuff. And like Mark said, we haven't seen the new one yet, so that's next week when that episode comes out. So we might be changing our mind. We might be like, oh, retcon everything.
Yeah, and I understand, because I'm a huge Michael Myers fan. I love the original movie. It really is, to be honest with you, looking back, it was my entryway into horror. It's probably the first horror movie I ever saw, if I think about it, other than like some Universal monster movies or something on Svengoolie. Halloween really was the movie that stood out for me, starting way back when I was like 4 or 5 years old, which is bizarre that I could even remember that. But and that was the movie that got me
with your mom.
That's the movie that got me into horror, and I love it to this day. I think it's probably my favorite movie of all time. And I keep wanting a little bit more of that experience again. And I'm always a little, every time something new comes out, I'm excited. And then it's like a letdown. And kind of Halloween 4 back in the day, it was the same thing. It was sort of like, oh, another Halloween. I can't wait. And then you watch it, and then it's not quite what you were hoping for, because, again, it never lives up to the original. So in the end of the day, you know what? Here's the thing with this. I'm going to rate this one. And I'm going to say, as a Halloween movie, I got to give it a thumbs down, because I love the original, and it just can't be beat. But as another category, as a beer and popcorn movie, it is perfect. It's a good slasher movie. It's fun. It's well acted. It's cool to watch. See like. So I don't know if we had like a second rating for beer and popcorn movies, I would put this one in there, because. It's definitely I got some PBRs in the fridge, and I just pop some new popcorn. Yeah, I'll toss this one in. So but again, like holding this to the original is like almost impossible.
Holding anything to the original is impossible. The original Halloween is, when you're talking in terms of horror movies, it is the perfect horror movie. The two of us would agree that it is our favorite horror movie of all time. It's for me, and I think for you as well, it's right up there when it comes to favorite movies of all time.
Absolutely.
I give Halloween 4 a thumbs up. I give it a giant thumbs up. This is my introduction to Danielle Harris, who to this day, 30 years later, I still have a crush on her, who I've had the opportunity to tell to her face, which maybe was a little creepy, but I was like, I had a crush on you when I was 12, and I still do.
That is so cool.
But all right, guys. So I think that'll wrap it up for this anniversary episode. So we'll see you back here next week with the highly anticipated, well, maybe not, Horror Heads review of Halloween H4O 2018. What the fuck?
And no, Nick Castle is not Michael Myers in this film.